Hello, malt mates. Welcome to the Whisky Bothy and welcome to Ralphie Review 1065, which is the second review in a 4-part series on Scotch whisky independent bottlers and what they bring us in terms of the diversity and variety of options and flavours. And last review, I reviewed, what was it again? Yeah, I remember now. It was a James Eadie bottling of Milton Duff, which was interesting because Milton Duff doesn't have an official bottling as such, and therefore the only way to experience this single malt is through an independent bottling. One of the reasons there isn't an official bottling is that Milton Duff is considered or dismissed, right? And this is the attitude part of the culture, is dismissed as blend filler. And as such, it isn't taken as seriously as it should be. So when the independent bottlers, who are operating on a much smaller and frankly more personal level than many of the particularly larger distilleries, as an example, they can customise their management and cask policy as regards coaxing, encouraging and maturing these less spectacular single malt varieties such as Milton Duff and making them sparkle. And I thoroughly enjoyed that whisky, and it's because of the range and options and diversity from the independent bottlers that I'm going to review for you the first ever Armagnac on my channel. I have never reviewed an Armagnac before. Now, let's get this into context. I have reviewed an Armagnac matured Scotch whisky. Specifically, it was Craigellachie 13-year-old Armagnac finish, and it was delicious. You had that lovely, beautifully elegant, composed fruit note from the Armagnac bonding successfully with the natural complexity of the Craigellachie signature. And one of the problems, by the way, as a whisky drinker, is that we don't mind all the range of casks from sherry, tequila, Marsala, Armagnac, red wine, white wine, all these different arrays of other alcoholic beverages which are matured in casks. We really don't seem to mind when it's basically used to finish off a Scotch whisky. But when we approach them out with a Scotch whisky finish on their own, that's when we start to challenge our palate. And we should be doing that. I'm going to review this for you. This is from Dramore, a small family-owned independent bottler that's prominent in the UK. They're doing a pretty good job. I've reviewed some of their whisky before. The last bottle was an Inch Fad, 15 or 16-year-old, which was wonderfully delivered, a great experience. And this is 17-year-old single cask Chateau de Bordenove. Cask number, just for your reference by the way, cask number 1013, and this is bottle number 104 of 300 bottles obtained from that cask. This is Dramore are not the only bottler that do this. Berry Brothers and Rudd in St James's in London do this because of the extensive range of their cask contracts globally. But I'm particularly enjoying this one because it's a 17-year-old Armagnac, which is relatively young for an Armagnac, which tends to get quite extensively aged before it's sold. And as a result, it's a spirit-driven experience. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of a deep dive here as to how Armagnac is made. What I will do is post a link to the Chateau de Bordenave website, so you can actually see get your window into seeing a small established family-owned Armagnac producers. You may have come across some of their products in your travels. One of the most notable is bottled by the name of Baron de Signac, which you readily find from select specialist retailers of high-end spirits in the UK. So you'll find at Master of Malt and Whisky Exchange, for example. But let's focus on this, and this review is going to really concentrate on the signature, the personality, and the flavour. So I'm not really going to say too much about Armagnac itself, except to say, to put this whole review into context, is that if you go and check out Serge Valentin's site called whiskyfun.com, which I always highly recommend, you will notice that he's right into his malternatives, which include rum, American spirits, bourbon and rye, but also cognacs and armagnacs feature quite regularly. Such is the legacy, the quality of production and quality of availability, particularly in France, of some of these very fine spirits. And when we have a cosmopolitan palate which is not institutionalised specifically in Scotch whisky, we're going to get a lot out of this. One of the problems I see in the whisky scene is that too many Scotch whisky drinkers just focus exclusively on single malts with the occasional blended malt for a novelty, but run the risk of an institutionalised palate. And this will happen if you're an experienced whisky drinker. Oh, excuse me, incoming. Right, he wants treats, don't you? Yeah. It's the little one. Hello, Fluffy. Please keep your bottom out the camera lens. People don't want to see your skanky bottom. There you go. Treats. And give Daddy some peace and quiet. There we go. Works every time. Institutionalising our palates in Scotch whisky. What happens is, as an experienced Scotch whisky drinker, we go through our phases. We go through our peat monster phase and end up with Octomore and independent bottlings of Kalila. That's where you're generally heading there. Then we have our sherry monster phase. So we start with a few sherry finished whiskies. Glenfarclas, for example, are predominantly sherry matured whiskies like Glenfarclas or Glengoyne. And then we gravitate to the more heavily sherry influenced eccentric signatures such as Edradour. That's where you tend to go with the sherry monster journey. But at some point, we pour a glass of Scotch whisky, we nose it, we taste it, and we're just not getting anything. And this is due to palate fatigue. We have over-concentrated the definition of what we're looking for in terms of smell and flavour. In recent years, it's been heartwarming for me to have more of my rum reviews getting accepted, which brings us to this. One of the great opportunities that the established independent bottlers who are thinking through their relationship to their market, right? No heavy marketing here. It's all by word of mouth and personal connections, and also by enthusiastic relationships with small high street independent retailers. This is why the independent retailers are essential for the future of our availability to good spirits. We should never ignore them. Amazon will never supply what we're truly looking for. They'll supply some of what we're looking for, some of the time, and sometimes it's cheap, and other times it's grossly overpriced. Be aware of that. So here we have a 17-year-old cask strength, the strength being 49.2%, and to the credit, they're giving you some nice clear information on the back. distilled in 2005. So 17 years old. So bottled 2022. Yep. What have we got here? On the nose. It's not whiskey. If you're used to whiskey, you're going to find your first nosing of this very awkward, because your palate is expecting whiskey subconsciously, but you're not getting it. This is absolutely an eau de vie, matured eau de vie fruit spirit from France. Armagnac is the southern cousin of cognac, but much of their production has an awful lot in common. And I would particularly refer you to the calibre of wood they use in their casks to get the results they're looking for. This is so important. Also have a good look at the stills they use. They have quite a complex still arrangement, which varies between distilleries. It's fascinating. So we've got a fruity nose. What kind of fruit? Tangy, concentrated, caramelised, grape, prune, red cherry, soft caramel notes, slight fudginess, strong background aromatic coming forward, floral, absolutely. What kind of floral? I'm getting orchids. I'm getting cymbidiums. I don't know if you're an orchidologist. It's the wrong name, but I like that name. I don't know if you're an orchidologist or not, but orchids make up 25% of the global plant varieties. It's a phenomenal genus of flowering plant. And some of the most strongest perfumes generated by flowers come from orchids. And I refer you to the Paphiopedilum, which is a hanging orchid in like an inverted tulip with a tongue hanging out. It only blooms for about 3 or 4 days, but the perfume is absolutely extraordinary. And I've had the pleasure several times in botanic gardens in Scotland, once in Edinburgh and twice in Glasgow, of smelling this orchid. And once you smell it, you don't forget it. It's resinous, aromatic, floral. That's the primary notes of it. And I'm getting that in here. The nose is absolute quality. There's not a ripple of a blemish on this nose. What I'm particularly enjoying is that there's not been too much cask time. Therefore, I am getting the fruit signature of the grapes, the variety of grapes that have been used for the production of this wine spirit. Getting a little bit of banana there now, a little bit of banana confectionery, banana chews, marshmallowy type bananas. There's definitely a slight confectionery note in there, but it's not sweet. It's just the smell of a sweetie shop, but not the taste of a sweetie shop. The plum note's returning. It reminds me of some palinkas that I've tried in the past, which are an exquisite form. We just don't see palinkas yet. Hopefully we will, because when they're going well, they are amazing. First taste. Sharp, tangy, and quite tart. With the flavour, there comes a little hint of sweetness, but a whole load of bitter and an astringency, and it's very lasting. It's almost an absinthe bitter note that quickly develops from the latter end of the first stage of the development, going right through into the finish and dominating with some lemongrass, green ginger, and I would almost mention, I'll mention it, a touch of wasabi, This is when we add water. A word of caution, please take note. Don't treat an Armagnac like a whiskey. When you're approaching a new spirit for the first time, add as little water as possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 or 7 drops. So I've added not even 1 milliliter of water. I'm being very cautious here, because when we're first encountering a spirit, we need to open it up very gradually so as to give our senses more time to get their bearings as to what's actually going on, to what not just the energy within the glass, but also the characteristics that are coming through and the developments of the spirit over time. Now, being a younger spirit, it's going to open up that little bit quicker because its development is not being suppressed by a lot of cask engagement. And this is one reason why I'm really going to recommend this particular bottling here. 17 is a relatively young age for an Armagnac, but it's not too young. Therefore, this is very much that youthful, fruit-led experience, which is as clean as a whistle because it's been very, very well made. You will not find this in Amazon. You will certainly not find this in a supermarket. Don't even try. Waste your time looking there. I bought this from my local specialist liquor store in Glasgow. They're friends of mine, the Good Spirits Company. You can't go wrong. If you're in Glasgow, they're well worth a visit. I know. A gratuitous plug for my mates. But hey, it's my channel. Why not? I shop there myself. And importantly, I always appreciate the input that the experienced staff give me towards buying stuff for me to review for you. And I trust the guidance they give me, because I've never had a reason over the last 10 to 15 years not to trust the guidance. It's always worked out really well. Back to this Armagnac. I've added some water. I've clearly given it 5, 6, 7 or 8 minutes. Let's go back to the nose again. It's brighter now. It's a little bit more grapefruit and lemon, and the aromatics are becoming softer and fruitier. A tiny little banana note in there. It's quite intriguing because I'm not sure why it's there, but it is, for me anyway. There's a creamy, almost fudgy fruit note developing and settling down the whole spirit. And I'm just getting more of awareness of the intensity of the concentrate of what you call grape juice. Although I'm noticing some melon, Charentais melon, or is it honeydew melon? I think it's Charentais melon, creeping in there. The longer you spend with time nosing it, the better you are rewarded. Particularly if you're new to Armagnac, you cannot rush this. You need to give your brain subliminal, subconscious time, left to its own devices, just to be nosing and tasting before you go too fast into the bottle. I'd just like to add, this is unchill filtered and it's natural colour. There we go. So a reasonable amount of colour there as a direct result of the cask activity. And it has been active cask activity. And you will notice with adding water that the wood, the complex European oak wood, is starting to manifest itself and bring in a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of sort of more wood toffee notes, natural fructose, and the kind of vague nuttiness. If I was going to be specific, I would say macadamia nut, but I don't want to at this stage. It's still too early in the... Put it this way, when I was sitting by the fireside listening to my house music, well, deep trance, I like deep trance, I actually spent about 2 hours over a single glass of this. And the glass you see here is the quantity I had. That is all I had. It was a fantastic experience for me because it wasn't whisky. I'm just giving myself a different recalibrated range of smells and taste for me to enjoy. It takes time because, as I mentioned earlier in this review, it's so easy to get institutionalised in whisky and only whisky, which is always the variation of one theme, because all single malt whisky is made from malted barley. Period. Sure, it could be made from unmalted barley, but we don't see much of that in Scotch whisky, unfortunately. Taste. More prolonged arrival, more sweetness, more intense cola resinous dark cherry notes, cherry and plum. There's a nuttiness in there. It's slightly walnut, macadamia. There's a soft nut and a darker nut. I'm also getting ginger, cardamom. I'm getting gentle background, almost residual cassis, soft cinnamon notes. I'm also getting allspice. I'm also getting something quite tart and dry, like an astringent green herb. It's almost a touch of wormwood or gentian. Probably gentian. It's a little bit softer. And at this point, I'm adding now another few drops of water. Much? No. We're in no rush with this. This is still virtually up at cask strength, but we're taking it down gradually and incrementally because that is what we need to do to access it. Final taste before the mark. And by the way, it's not a malt mark. It's an Armagnac mark. I'm trying to fuse Armagnac mark into one word, and it's not quite happening. And this is me sober. I'll try it when I'm no longer sober and it'll probably work. Oh, rosewater. Absolute rosewater. Getting that little tingle of Turkish delight as it continues to open up. This isn't a big moving spirit. It does everything slowly in its own time. But even as it does so, it starts to reveal more of itself, more of its natural complexity from a beautifully layered and very well presented Armagnac. I'm interested to see how viewing figures go in this. 5 years ago, I would never have considered reviewing an Armagnac. It's only 5 years ago I really started to do a few rums now and again, and I could see that there wasn't much of an audience for it. But I'm also seeing it's changing with rum now. There is more of an audience. And I think what's happening is collectively, as a mutual society of information sharers, Scotch whisky drinkers are expanding not just our knowledge, but our points of references and points of appreciation, going beyond Scotch whisky and connecting with other spirits, rum, some of the bourbons, but not many because most are mass-produced corporate products which kind of taste the same. I mean, I'm really looking forward to a new generation of bourbon coming out of the US, which is the small micro distilleries using non-GMO corn that has got more flavour in it. I'm really looking forward to that. We're not that far away now. But in the meantime, there is such a growing global awareness of what spirits are out there and what spirits a Scotch whisky drinker is ready to connect with to further engage, enlarge and expand the appreciation of the complexity of engagement that we practice days, weeks, months, and for years to get to this stage. This isn't for the passive consumer, but the passive consumer is not watching this video. You are. You're engaged, you're interested, you're a mock mate. So here we are, my very first Armagnac review. Let's give it a mark. The set quite high actually. Yeah. 86 out of 100. Very first ever Armagnac review from an independent bottle, Dramore. Just put in a Google search for Dramore. You'll soon find their website. Subscribe for the updates and their newsletters. They're always quite engaging. This company's always in the move, giving tastings. And this is something else I want to draw your attention to. The independent bottlers are far more personable and intimate in engaging and connecting with their customers, because it's their very nature, because they're small companies. And this makes the quality of the engagement with all small independent bottlers that much more substantial than we can with the superficiality of a bulk marketing, heavily redacted and edited programme, which we tend to laugh at and scoff at, but hey, it's what the passive consumer wants at the end of the day. But we're not passive consumers, we're active customers, and this is what we're looking for. I'll see you for my following review, 1065 extras. I was on the wrong page there, my notes, in which I'll be talking about more in depth about alternatives and where we can find them and why we should connect with them and what we'll experience when we do. So see you there. Bye-bye.